20 new classes, 34 pre-designed backpacks, expanded equipment lists, and a slew of optional material to custom craft your role-playing experience is what you're going to find inside the Castles and Crusades Adventurers Backpack Reforged Edition from Trollord Games. And I'll share my review right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I'll be sharing my review of the Castles and Crusades Adventurers Backpack Reforged Edition from Trollord Games. This is written by Stephen Chenault and friends, and the 224-page hardcover is available now. Carries an MSRP of $39.99. If you want to bundle that with the PDF, you can do so for $49.99 or grab just the PDF alone over at Drive-Thru RPG for $19.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Castles and Crusades Adventurers Backpack Reforged Edition. A couple of things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Trollord Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. First thing we'll do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life, so let's give credit where credit is due. The Adventurer's Backpack is essentially a cornucopia of optional material for the Castles and Crusades role-playing game. And if you're familiar with Castles and Crusades, you already know that the Castle Keeper's Guide, which would sound like it's an essential core book you need to have, is not. It's just all packed with optional content. So this is on top of the Castle Keeper's Guide. The main focus of the Adventurer's Backpack is going to be classes. So we're going to start off with 20 new classes. Some of these are essentially more focused dual class or multi-class sort of characters. So as an example, we've got the Arcane Thief. So a character along the lines of the Grey Mouser, as opposed to just being a magic user thief. So we've got quite a few of those. And then we will also have other classes, which are what we would expect to see if the number of classes expanded for Castles and Crusades. So the Blade Dancer, the Archer, we've got some various different knights. So those are some of the examples that we've got. And in fact, let's kind of dive into one of these. All right, might as well go with the magic user. Yes, I know. You're probably thinking, wait a second, magic user, isn't that in the core book? No, it's not in the player's book because it's the wizard. So we've got the magic user here. Prime attribute is charisma. It uses a D8 hit die. It can have any disposition, any alignment, any weapons, any armor. Whoa, right? Holy cow. But there are going to be some limitations when we get into the information about weapons and armor. So anyway, so we get a description, archetype, as well as the purpose of this character class. So as a player, what can you expect to be doing if you take on the role of that class? We're going to get a breakdown of the first dozen levels, as well as what new abilities are unlocked as the character levels up. I will say that many of the magic using classes do tend to not have a lot of new abilities unlocked because they're unlocking new spell levels as they're going along, new numbers of spells, and so forth. A lot of the more martial character classes do unlock much more as far as the abilities go. A lot of times with some of the magic using classes, they do start to unlock a bit more when they hit level 13 and higher. So, as an example, the Arcane Thief really doesn't unlock anything the first 12 levels outside of improving the thieving skills as well as the magic usage. And then they start getting special abilities later on. So, speaking of abilities, we're going to get a breakdown of each. And then we will get more information about higher levels. So, from level 13 through 24. I have to say that not every one of these classes seems to be balanced with others. And it appears just reading through this that some of these classes, at least in my opinion, would be far more entertaining to take on than others. But, and again, just my opinion there. But we have a really, really nice mix of new classes. Some of them are tied directly into specific races. So we've got one for elves and dwarves and gnomes, and we have the feral halfling. And I had to chuckle because there's a pretty well-known image from Castles and Crusades, and it is a feral halfling biting into the tentacle of this Lovecraftian-looking monster. And now we have the feral halfling as a class. I thought that was really wild, pretty interesting. But like I said, we've got a really nice mix of different classes here. Then once we wrap up that, we are going to jump on into our expanded equipment lists as well as our backpacks. So we have a variety of different equipment tables. And then we'll get into the backpacks. And if you are familiar with Castles and Crusades, you know that we've already seen a bunch of these, which make life really easy for players and castle keepers out there, because depending on what class you are or depending on the role of your character, there are starting equipment backpacks that can just be assigned to each player. You don't have to sit there purchasing each and every last item. So I do like that quite a lot. When I was running some Castles and Crusades, I utilized that when we were jumping on into the adventure from the starter set. Even though the backpacks weren't part of the starter set, I did utilize those. Then we're going to get back into classes again, and we're going to get into a bunch of information about expanding classes, expanding current classes. There's also discussion if you want to create your own classes here. I really like this info quite a bit. I thought it was really nicely done. And then we will actually get breakdowns of each of the current classes and what other things might unlock if you want to expand these out to give the players a bit more as they level up. So I like that quite a bit. And then we'll kind of get into a grab bag of optional rules. So we'll get into topics such as rewarding land as treasure. We get some information about magic and utilizing various different classes as spellcasters. So the bard and the ranger and the paladin as an example, and getting new spell lists for those classes. We get some new spells as well. Here's that land as treasure. A bit of information about domain play. Not a ton, to be honest. But still, it looks at each of these different classes and how they would utilize land as treasure. Then we're going to wrap up with some information about the various different planes. Like I said, last 50 pages or so, 40 pages or so, is kind of a grab bag of different optional material you might want to use at your game table. So that is a peek inside the Castles and Crusades Adventures Backpack Reforged Edition from Trollord Games. Let's swing back over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. As I pointed out, the classes in the Adventures Backpack are pretty cool. I liked quite a lot of them, although there are some that I liked far better than others, and I thought would be quite more interesting than maybe some of the other classes. But then again, it's just, personal preference as far as that goes. As far as the production quality of the book, very nicely done, nice thick paper stock. This is going to hold up very well at your game table. It does utilize a lot of artwork I have seen previously from Castles and Crusades releases, so there is quite a bit of artwork that has been recycled. I also have to point out, I can't tell you what previous editions of the Adventurers Backpack looked like because I haven't seen them, so I can't tell you exactly what may have changed. I would assume that we have some tweaks that have taken place, maybe some additions as well. I also have to point out there are some typos and that throughout. It's something we kind of expect with Trollord Games releases, but not at the rate where it's like something that really, you're like, oh my gosh, every single page. No, nothing like that. But yes, there are those expected Trollord Games typos and slight grammatical errors, but nothing huge there. I have to say, I think for most castle keepers out there and players, their mileage is going to really vary as far as what they get out of the Adventurers Backpack Reforged Edition. Because if you're quite happy with the content you already have from the player's book and the Castle Keeper's Guide and so forth, do you need this content? No. If you are looking for new classes or new ways to expand upon the existing classes, then I would say, yes, this is most definitely worth a peek. I like the content within. I just have to be very honest. I'm not sure how much use everybody out there who picks this up is going to get. So I just wanted to let you know. So I do dig the Adventurer's Backpack. I do think it's worthy of picking up. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Castles and Crusades Adventurer's Backpack Reforged Edition a 7.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I think it's pretty cool. I could see myself taking on the roles of some of the classes in here. I just know that the mileage is going to vary for the castle keepers and players out there. All right, that is it for this time out. If you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as Drive-Thru RPG, and to do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of most sales as a commission. And all those commissions really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal and become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up. So be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. If you enjoyed this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, be sure to select all notifications, because that way YouTube might decide to let you know not only when I share videos such as this review, but it just may inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube as I share the latest in tabletop role-playing game news and more. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.